Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Amazing Podcast. We're glad to have you listen in. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Amazing, and want to urge you to go check out all of the stuff we do over at amazic.com. That's amazic.com. We've got a lot of conversations around Kubernetes, cloud native, DevOps, containers, security, monitoring, just a whole bunch. So, whatever you're interested in, head over there and you'll find it. Today, we're going to be talking about something new, something we've not touched on since the start of this podcast. We're going to be talking about one of the most widely used cloud services ever. In fact, it was the first uh, cloud service launched by AWS, which is the biggest vendor in the space. We're going to be talking about AWS S3. So it's really, really popular. And if you run anything in the cloud, you likely run, uh, likely used S3 for data storage. So we're going to be talking today to not someone from AWS S3, but one of the partners of AWS S3, and they're doing some really cool stuff on building on top of AWS S3. And this is Cloudian. The startup name is Cloudian, Cloudian. And I have with me Glenn Haley, who's the head of product, here to talk to us today all about object storage, which is what S3 is about, and Cloudian's approach to object storage. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So buckle up. Hope you're excited for this conversation. Glenn, it's great to have you with us. Welcome. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Twain. It's a pleasure to be a part of the discussion today with you.
All right, all right. Yeah, we're covering new ground here. But before we get into talking about data storage, object storage, S3, tell us about yourself, what you've been up to all through your career, what led you to Cloudian. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Again, my name's Glenn Haley. I've been in the industry 26 years, specializing in networking and security, storage, and even cloud computing and storage. My career started out as an application engineer working on microprocessors, RISC microprocessors,
Mhm.
at Toshiba. Then I turned focus onto network security and eventually sent me down the path of focusing on file and magnetic tape storage, and then finally here object storage over the last 6 years. So I think this journey fits me pretty well. I see compute and scalable capacity as kind of the currency driving a lot of innovation today, certainly
Mhm.
within the areas of AI that we're seeing. So I'm
All right.
now head of product at Cloudian, and I lead a product and solution team activities, managing the overall global product strategy and to ensure it
Mhm.
aligns with our corporate objectives.
Okay, okay, great, great. Um, so to get us started about this topic, tell us a bit about storage. Some are very familiar probably with what object storage is, but for many, they probably could do with an explanation or a refresher of the different types of storage and particularly what object storage does. So could you get us started with that?
Absolutely. So when you think of storage, there are, block, file, and then object storage, also tape, magnetic tape. And what we focus on is unstructured data. So it tends to be images and files and text, not computational type of, data sets with object storage. So that object storage, lends itself to larger data sets, whereas with, block, it tends to be transactional, and file can be kind of a nearline mix of the two. Um, with regards to persistence with persistent storage, often you think of persistent memory and storage historically being around the media itself and the volatility of the media. with object storage, with regards to kind of persistence, it's the ability to make sure the system is able to keep the data safe and accessible for a longer term, even after the original app or the processes have closed the file, closed the object, and are no longer accessing it. So unlike temporary storage, it ensures your data stays available and intact. In object storage, data is stored as objects. They're self-contained units, which includes the data, the metadata, as well as unique identifiers to that data. And this approach is highly scalable and it's reliable based on how you configure things like storage policies, making it great for cloud storage, backups, and again, the use of kind of larger data sets. Gartner research actually states that 95% of all new cloud native workloads actually rely on object storage. And I think this statistic's quite interesting. Cloudian's product is called Hyperstore, and
Mm-hmm.
and and it uses persistent object storage to handle large amounts of unstructured data, handling it securely, and it includes the ability to store multiple copies for durability, depending on how we deploy and how you set up the implementation. It can even support up to 14 nines of durability, um, protecting against site failure, errors, threats, etc. Availability is another strong aspect of persistence, and that's based on storage policies, the number of nodes that you deploy, the consistency levels, in which version you're accessing, and how that's configured. And then Cloudian provides strong read after write consistency, which means that any read request after a write will immediately result in the latest version of that object. So this can be useful for applications that often read and list objects immediately after writing them. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's high level and but definitely a focus on the merits benefits of object storage.
Mm-hmm. All right. Wow, that's a great overview. One thing that comes to my mind as you talk about all of this is that I was surprised at the stat 90% of cloud native apps rely on object storage. That's quite a number. But the one thing that anyone that's looked around when it comes to databases and data storage and all of that is that there have been so many new options that keep coming up in terms of how you can store and process data and use data and all of that, different options. But object storage has remained so important, like you just mentioned, and even S3 has not grown out of fashion. Why would you say this is the case, even though there's innovation, that S3 continues to remain such a like fundamental fabric of like cloud native applications built even today, probably like we're going on what, probably 2 decades of S3 existing.
Yeah.
That's quite a while for a product, in the tech space to really still be so widely used.
Yeah, it is a great question. AWS first announced their service. They launched their first S3 offering back in the US in March of 2006. And Cloudian, when you compare it against that, we announced and released our first version of Hyperstore in March of 2011. So it
Oh,
was 5 years, and our founders, they made a bet on S3 long ago, way before S3 became the de facto standard of cloud API connectivity. And that intuition and bet has been a very good one for our company. I mean, AWS is a very strong strategic partner of Cloudian, and we
mhm,
meet regularly every other week to discuss many things together as strategic partners. I
mhm,
think some of that includes we're partners of the AWS Marketplace with an offering into what they call Outposts. That's their on-prem deployment because they
mhm,
realize that everything can't be stored in the cloud. And
mhm.
we're an exclusive partner, the only solution in what they call local zones, where they haven't created a region yet. And this tends to be in some third-party data center as a co-located solution.
Oh, okay.
And but to answer your question, I think why has S3 become the internet form of connectivity, I think it has to do with a number of things. The ease of use, of using an S3 API as a URL type of endpoint,
Mm-hmm.
um, the infinite scalability if a solution is developed using S3, the
Mm-hmm.
flat namespace, even across a large, potentially exabyte size cluster, all accessible by JSON APIs. S3 is a JSON API. And then the ability to have user taggable metadata is another big advantage of using object that S3 supports. So we are recognized by AWS as a strong strategic partner because Cloudian enhances and complements S3 by bringing 100% native, fully compatible S3 implementation that can be used on premise. Our platform uses the same S3 API that AWS does, means that our SDK is essentially the AWS SDK. And this, of course, ensures seamless integration and compatibility with any existing S3 applications out there. And
Okay.
by offering S3 compatible object storage on-prem, it allows you that flexibility to store, manage, scale your data sets locally while benefiting from the same scalability, performance, and features of S3, like encryption, multi-tenancy, object lifecycle management, just to name a few.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when talking about object storage in S3, one of the challenges that organizations would face is running large-scale applications, especially, with every passing year, it seems that there's more data to deal with. And so data volumes keep increasing. And this being the case, how do organizations handle this challenge of scale when it comes to object storage?
Yeah. AI, that's kind of the revolution, best thing that's happened since electricity, perhaps some people say, and those are enormous, large data sets that can be leveraged as an
Mm-hmm.
example. So when enterprise try to scale persistent object storage, one of the key challenges that are faced is just managing that sheer volume of data that you referenced, and then also keeping the performance levels high. So
Mm-hmm.
the S3 API itself helps by providing that persistent connection to scalable storage, ensuring that your data remains accessible as your systems grow. 50% of our customer base are customers that continue to grow their cluster. They may have started out small, 100 terabytes, but now they're hundreds of petabytes. And I had
Mm-hmm.
one customer want to talk about exabyte scale over a
Wow.
5-year planning period. So that's enormous. So maintaining your performance security as your data scales across regions is still a bit tricky. The
Mhm.
the challenges around integrating S3 storage with legacy systems to maintain compatibility is obviously another challenge. And while S3 itself enables persistent connectivity, enterprise companies really must make sure that they ensure their object storage solution grows seamlessly without sacrificing, speed, security, and compatibility.
Mhm. Wow. That's quite some scale if you're talking about petabyte and even exabyte scale.
Yeah.
Uh, but the other challenge that comes up related to scale at that level is costs. And, for sure, there needs to be strategies to reduce costs when you have that much data. Could you comment a bit about that? What are some of the ways that organizations try to reduce costs, and how do they balance it so that they don't affect performance while reducing cost?
Yes. Well, in our particular solution, we scale linearly. So you can start as small as, a 3-node cluster, 100 terabytes. But as mentioned, if you need more, you just add additional nodes into the cluster, and that scales not only your capacity, but also your performance, linearly. And that way you can start small and grow as your organizations need to increase their amount of storage capacity. Um, to give some insight there, I mean, at scale, I mean, we can be like a half a cent per gig per month at scale when you take all things into consideration. And that's quite affordable when even considering using the cloud, storing your content in the cloud itself. So, cost is certainly something that needs to be managed. Depends on the workflow. The workflow, if and how often you access the data and what the workload of accessing that data is. If you want the lowest cost, we can store that on systems that are utilizing hard drives. But if you're looking for performance, certainly in the new analytic and AI type of workloads, those are highly recommended to be using all flash. So, so cost is relevant to performance, and it is a close thing that as a company, we work with our customers to size appropriately.
You mentioned hard disks, but where's the data stored when for your customers? Is it stored in AWS S3, so on AWS's infrastructure itself, or does Cloudian also manage separate infrastructure apart from S3? Where's the data stored?
So we bring the cloud to you on-prem. So your data is not stored in Amazon S3. We resemble function and are 100% compatible to anything that your applications are using in Amazon S3. But our solutions are, we're a software-defined storage company, and our solutions are deployed as, bare metal running on any third-party hardware of your choice, or clouding appliances, or, reference architectures from some of our key hardware partners like HP, GreenLake, Lenovo, Supermicro, etc.
Mhm.
And
Oh, all
so
right.
it's stored on-prem
Mhm.
into a cluster of nodes that are protected using storage policies.
All right, all right. And so you're able to bring the same functionality of S3, the cloud version of it, to on-premise. I guess that's the big um, promise, right?
And that's correct. Yeah,
Hmm.
and that brings a lot of benefit as well when you start talking about sovereign data and protecting data isolated within a particular region, making sure that you have multi-tenant support so that no one is accessing unauthorized data. I mean, security is a big part of object storage.
Yeah, anything more you want to mention? Because it sounds like you just were touching on a few important things related to security, but talk a bit more about security and just some of the issues. Actually, many of the data breaches we read, uh, there's often an S3 bucket that was not configured correctly, and it had secret credentials stored in it and was left accessible to anyone on the internet. So S3 actually comes up in quite a few data breaches, and so security is really important when we're talking about S3 and object storage. Talk to us a bit about the challenge of security and what organizations are trying to do to meet these challenges.
Yes, certainly, Twain. So in cloud native environments, security challenges with object storage mainly revolve around the data protection, the access controls, managing multi-tenancy, to name a few. With multi-tenancy, and about 30% of our customer base at Cloudian are managed service provider, cloud service provider, entities that are offering their own services using our technology. And so with multi-tenancy, multiple users or teams share the same storage infrastructure. It's really critical to ensure that the data isolation of one tenant is there so that another can't access that same information. These customers that I reference as service providers, they could have competing organizations using the same infrastructure, and they don't even know it because it's just protected and secure. This is where strong identity and access management and role-based access controls come into play, and enabling administrators set granular permission-based trust policies to ensure users only access the data that they're intended to access. Another big challenge and this has been a huge campaign for us, very successful in the past years, is around ransomware threats.
Mhm.
And because these hackers are getting savvy to attack the storage infrastructure layer itself. And and S3 provides, access, the access key and the secret key, just like AWS S3. We do the same, but ensuring that the content is not changeable, deletable, as is also very important. So features like object lock help to prevent data from being modified or deleted within a set time frame, which is crucial for regulatory compliance and ransomware protection. Basically, anything that's within a determined retain on hold date, or if an object has been given a legal hold status for some reason, then the objects in that particular configured bucket are immutable. They're not going to go anywhere, and they're not going to change.
All right, cool. I was wondering if you could show us Cloudian in action in a demo or a walkthrough of the dashboard itself.
Certainly. Let me just enable my screen here. I'll show you a few things. First thing that I do want to kind of bring a highlight to um, would be a single slide here. This is not intended to be a PowerPoint presentation, but this single slide really does bring a lot of what we're going to show in a demo that's not easy to see through configurations within a UI. And the first is the S3 compatibility, the multi-tenancy, and the ability to have rate plans associated with billing and QoS controls. The modular scalability, like I mentioned, where you can just continue to add nodes to a cluster. We'll take a look at a cluster and how many nodes exist, at least in my small demo. The ability to encrypt, to configure encryption and utilize object lock as a form of worm. The built-in data protections, also crucial, and that has to do with not only the worm and the encryption, but the ability to set versioning associated with object lock, and then up to 14 nines of durability if you have multiple sites, multiple data centers, multiple nodes configured with their appropriate storage policy. With us, everything we do is granular at the bucket level because, again, this is a perfect solution that can be used by managed service provider, cloud service providers offering their own solutions. And then, Cloudian is also the only 3-time Gartner Peer Insight Award recipient. Peer Insights is based on customer reviews, and we're the only, I think, 3-time award recipient there. So now
Oh,
let me jump over and let's take a look at a system. So this is now we're logged in as a admin, and the first thing I want to show is this is a dashboard. It's going to just show, and it's a VM I stood up over the weekend. So this system isn't heavily populated, nor has it been heavily used. But the first thing I want to show is users and groups. So with users and groups, you can have multi-tenant type of capability. You see all of these configured users and groups that have been configured. They can be users, they can be group admins. Of course, I'm logged in as a system admin, and that really provides a lot of flexibility and multi-tenant capability. And then if we look at the managing some of the QoS defaults, this is also critical because you don't want any single neighbor, any single application or user, dominating the use of the cluster. Perhaps they're doing just repeated list type of API calls. So you can go in and you can set QoS limits, and that's a key differentiator that should be considered. Another thing is rating plans. On the rating plans, this is where it lends itself very well, where you can come in and you can set specific details about how your customers, if you're charging internally as an organization, how they're using the storage. And that can be very powerful as well. Next, we're going to jump up and just in this short demo, look at the cluster itself. So what I've configured here is a 6-node cluster indicated by the green geometric symbols with the checkbox. And then it also indicates all the services that are running on those particular nodes are in a healthy state. And then the other thing is we can look at nodes. Now the node itself is going to be a view of all of the disks that are in the node, and the cluster can consist of multiple nodes, of course. So this is showing, the state of those drives, how much capacity has been used, so that you can maintain a healthy cluster. And then the other thing is looking at the cluster config. I want to call out here that when you look at the S3 endpoint, I mean, we're configured exactly the way you would configure an endpoint on AWS S3. And this along with even the identity access management configurations is just one example of how we maintain 100% compatibility with S3. Any applications, any tools, anything that you might be doing, maybe you're using Cloudberry or S3 browser or Boto 3 through something like Jupyter Notebook, it's all going to be usable just like you write into S3. And then storage policies, when we look at storage policies, these we have granular storage policies per bucket. So if you look at this first one here, this EC4+2 hybrid, and we look at some of the details here, this particular policy has been configured in a hybrid manner, meaning it's intelligent. Depending on the size of your object, it'll place that particular object in its most appropriate storage policy. That might be maintaining replica copies or distributing it in a wider stripe erasure coding scheme above that hybrid policy threshold. So our system is intelligent to ensure efficiency into how our customers are using it. And you can also set encryption with KMIP or server-side encryption, depending on the security stance and needs of your particular company. So now I'm going to log out as an admin. I'm going to log in as a user. Because a user is going to see a different going to see a different set of UI functions than a storage admin. And I'm on a remote desktop here, so I hope it's going to yeah. Give me 1 second. The page will come back up.
Sure. Yeah, quite like I found that the policies feature was quite interesting and gives you a lot of control.
Yes. So when we log in as a user, that's going to be what the user themselves are able to see. There we go.
All right.
All right. So we're gonna log in as into a group called demo. We're gonna log in as a user called demo. And okay. So now the user or a group are going to have a different view. And the first thing we're going to look at is their buckets and their objects. So now within the bucket and objects, you see a number of buckets, a few that I've created here. You can create as many buckets as you desire. But let's take a look at this one called Demo Object Lock. So if I click on the properties of Demo Object Lock, you can see you can set the bucket permissions just like S3 supports. And if we come over to Object Lock, you can set the governance mode or the compliance mode, as well as any retention period that you'd like to apply. And that you can see can be tied to the previous storage policy, the hybrid storage policy, as well as the encrypted storage policy that's been configured. The next thing we're going to look at is just objects themselves. So from within the Cloudian management console, you can see a number of objects. These would be files, perhaps, that were written as objects into this bucket. And we've got one here that looks like the Tower Bridge, and we've got one here that's another image. I believe these are sailboats, if I recall. And the power here is anything that you're doing with S3, you can do with ours. So now I'm using S3 browser, which is a standard S3 type of client portal that customers are familiar with. And you can see that we've got the same image. I got the same Tower Bridge, and we're going to upload a new image. So let's upload this Statue of Liberty. Very good. So now we have a Statue of Liberty over here in our S3 browser. And if we refresh our objects in that bucket, you now see that we have the same Statue of Liberty image that is inside the bucket reported from our Cloudian management console. So this is just a quick demo. We could spend an hour or more here on details, but emphasizing, S3 compatibility, security, and really being bringing that S3 experience on-prem.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Thanks for the demo. Yeah, I can tell that there's so much to the product there that what you showed us was just the tip of the iceberg. Um, you know, moving on, talk to us about things like monitoring and observability and analytics on all of the data stored. I see that so that you have a product called Hyper IQ, or I don't know if it's a feature of your Hyperstore product that does this. But it's, I think, quite crucial to have that information at hand, especially when you're running uh, applications at scale.
Yeah, absolutely. HyperIQ is a different product, but it's part of our portfolio and suite of products. HyperIQ is Cloudian's enhanced monitoring, reporting, alerting, and analytical platform that gives you real-time insights into your storage environment. It enhances data observability. It provides a complete view of your storage operations, other things like performance metrics, the system health, all through a simple, easy to see intuitive dashboard. Its database is based on Prometheus, so it is a time series database, but then all of its metrics are visualized through Grafana.
Okay.
And what sets HyperIQ really apart is its ability to proactively identify issues before they become problems.
Mm-hmm.
It uses AI and machine learning type techniques to spot patterns, and then it can alert you to potential risks and recommended actions to take. This makes managing your storage infrastructure not only easier but also smarter if you think about it that way. And you're not just reacting to problems, you're anticipating them. So it offers deep analytics, and HyperIQ allows you to make driven decisions, data-driven decisions around capacity planning, understanding who your top users are, what buckets, what objects are accessed most frequently, and you can also assess the health of the cluster. Hence, by seeing usage trends and optimizing resources and even planning for future growth, you can do all of this with confidence. And not many other object storage solutions out there have the ability to see this level of usage and consumption. I'll share my screen again because I think that's a powerful point to visualize here, and that is sorry, I got to move the banner out of the way.
No problem.
But just looking at a couple of key points here, this is HyperIQ, where
Mm-hmm.
you can get a comprehensive view of your infrastructure and monitor that from easy to see dashboards and easy to see states of network traffic through your load balancer and things like that. And then you can monitor any and all the services that are running on Hyperstore, our object storage solution. And you can see user behavioral analytics as well so to monitor user activity and get insights into, who's using the system most often, what objects and buckets are being accessed most frequently. And then, and through this, it allows you to also detect and enforce various compliance initiatives.
Oh, great. Wow, that's powerful stuff. As we wind down our conversation, Glenn, I want to just lastly ask you about what's coming up for Cloudian or even for this space of object storage. What do you see happening that you've got your eye on in the coming months?
Yeah, I would ask our viewers and listeners to keep their eye closely on AI because there's an enormous opportunity there. We're certainly focused on seeing all the excitement around, PyTorch and TensorFlow and various applications that are being used within AI workloads, utilizing our solution. Roadmap wise, Cloudian is introducing several exciting product updates in our next release, which is coming out here in November, and it includes more S3 compatibility enhancements. So
Mm-hmm.
we're adding S3 Select. We're finally seeing the need for this, which gives SQL type queries, right onto your stored data, speeding up data retrieval time significantly for things like AI applications that utilize S3 Select. KMIP, we're seeing the need to enhance key management with multi-tenant and multi-key support. This boosts performance and security for the most stringent, even military-grade security environments. Authentication and access improvements, where we will be expanding our SAML support, security assertion markup language, to provide federated identity access management for regular users. We were demoing a user, and now they can view the console. More operational efficiency around how we enable nodes to rebuild during rebalance operations when you scale the cluster, and enhancing data lifecycle management, where we're adding support for additional Glacier deep archive storage classes within header requests. So if you do want to tier or replicate content from our platform to S3, you can be assured it's going to end up in the appropriate storage class. There's a bunch of cybersecurity enhancements that are really exciting, and these are enhancing security aligned with the NIST cybersecurity framework to more
Mm-hmm.
intelligently identify, detect, respond to threats in the event that someone gained access to the system. Your objects are absolutely protected with object lock, but there are corner cases if some malicious or bad actor got access to the system, and we're protecting in enhanced ways. So these are just a number of things that we're adding, always striving to innovate, listening to our customers who are the biggest proponents, and have improved our solution through 800 customers and over 8,000 nodes deployed in the field in production use.
Wow. You should definitely come back and tell us about the next release in a couple of months. We'll try to schedule something with you.
Okay.
All right. With that, we come to the end of this conversation, and we hope you enjoyed all that we spoke about and that Glenn demoed and talked about just in quite detail, actually, about object storage and S3. So if you want to know more, go and check out their website. Cloudian, Cloudian, is the company's name, and Hyperstore is their product that seamlessly integrates with S3. That's all we have for you today. But Glenn, actually, before you go, one question to get to know you a bit. What would be your alternate career path if not for your job in tech?
Alternate career path. Well, okay, to get to know me. So if I hadn't focused on probably a career in the tech industry, then I probably would have continued to pursue being a professional fighter, maybe a martial arts stunt person. So martial arts is definitely a passion of mine, and I have an extensive background and have been training for over 40 years in martial arts, and teaching for 25 of those 40. I currently hold a 6th degree black belt in American Kempo Karate and also
Well,
ranked in Kodokan Judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and shoot wrestling. So
oh,
yeah, I've competed internationally in sport karate and Muay Thai and grappling, and I fought twice for California state title fights with the International Kickboxing Federation and was actually on a small stage MMA reality show in Texas called Cage Quest back in 2012. So all these experiences have could have been nurtured perhaps with more focus and maybe you realize being a professional fighter or something like that. The other passion, Twain, that I have is on history, and I actually teach my kids ancient history because as a kid, I always wanted to be an archaeologist. I'm deeply interested in ancient civilizations like Rome, Egypt, Greece, and being an archaeologist, exploring ruins and uncovering artifacts was always viewed as maybe not a money-making career, but it's just blending adventure with my love of history. But I
wow.
think I think that said, I'll stick to technology because, at my age and my wife's influence, I product management is certainly stressful at times and tech can be stressful, but it's nowhere near as hazardous as professional fighting or maybe living the life of Indiana Jones. So I think I'll stick to technology and product management.
Fascinating. You've got so many interests, and you're the kind of person I think that, is good to be sitting next to on a long flight. Because you have so many varied interests and you have so much to talk about from just all of the experiences you had. It was wonderful getting to know you a bit and to see what you're working on at Cloudian. We hope you'll join us again soon.
I'd love to. Twain, thanks for the opportunity and the listeners' time today. Greatly appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks to all of our listeners and viewers for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.